Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel here on YouTube. Here with me, as I have a lot of the time, maybe more often than not, I guess, maybe, I don't know. I have my partners in crime, Mr. DBQ Hams. How you doing, DBQ?
I'm doing good. I've been working all weekend and glad to sit down and talk about some games with you gentlemen. So, which is great. And yes, most of the time we are all here. Life gets in the way sometimes, but that's okay. We've got plenty to talk about tonight.
And Mr. Talmaster 99, how you doing, Tal?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. For a second there, I thought you had a Contra hat on, but it's not a Contra hat.
No.
I saw that little. I thought that was the C from Contra for a second there. I was like, that's not.
Are there Contra baseball caps? Is that a thing?
Oh, I'm sure there are somewhere. I'm sure you can get one.
It's a holiday season. Now we know what Tao wants for Christmas.
That's right. Hey, we got the new one coming out, I think. Actually next year, I think.
Yes, it's slated for 24, so we'll see.
Yes, I have it's a hardware hat. It is a software. It is a gaming shirt, though, from Aperture Science from Portal.
Yeah.
So, Tal, while we have you on the mic, let's have you kick us off in the show with the first gaming report out. You have actually been playing something new.
Yeah, totally brand new. And actually something part of a new story that I'll talk about later also. But SteamWorld Build, I downloaded. Came out last week, and it was free for Game Pass. So I played it on both actually my Xbox Series X and on my PC. About maybe an hour each-ish or so, about an hour. So it's kind of like a city builder, I guess. And I never played any of the previous SteamWorld games. I don't know if anybody, DB, I don't know, did you or Game?
I played some Dig, the original, way back on the 3DS. I owned Dig 2 at some point, and then there was SteamWorld Heist, which was out in space a little bit, which is a tactical one, and then SteamWorld Quest, which was kind of a card-based RPG.
Yeah. So what were the first two games? Or well, I guess the first one. What kind of
SteamWorld Dig? It was
you
would go out and it was basically digging. It was the sand levels of Mario 2, right? You were digging down, trying to find things, bring them back to sale in the town.
Okay.
Was kind of the gameplay loop.
Okay. Yeah, I never really played those guys. I know they're highly regarded. I think for at least the first couple. I don't know how the other spin-off series have done, but I know a lot of people, a lot of podcasts I listen to, they're always they praise the SteamWorld Dig series. But this one is basically like a city builder, and I think you do some of that kind of digging later, or there's kind of that part of it. I haven't got to that yet, so I've just kind of been. There's I think like 5 maps, maybe even more than that, when you first start the game that you can choose from. And you just, I just picked the first one, whatever it was, kind of like a deserty, like Old West town looking map. So I picked that, and I'm kind of just going through and doing my layout of my city, which I've kind of started doing these city builders, and I have to go back to actually City Skylines 2, which I barely started. I think last month when it came out. I'm going to try that one because that's supposed to be like really detailed and stuff, and also I think it had problems, but hopefully they've fixed it by now. But I've been into these kind of city builders. I had that one on I think it was Pocket City that I had played for a while on mobile. I never really played these kind of games before, like Sim City and stuff like that. I think I tried it like back in the day, but I was just like, I didn't really get into it. But now, I guess now that I'm older, for some reason, it's just kind of one of those cozy type of games. I guess you just kind of do city management stuff, and which is I'm starting to find out it's really not my forte because there's so many things that you gotta keep track of. Your economy, and are your people happy, and or, well, in this case, the workers, they're all workers. Because you go around, you're gathering materials and stuff like that to build up your city and to power it and to build different things. So it's interesting. I'm enjoying it so far. The controls on the Xbox were actually pretty good. I think for a game like this, Obviously, it's better on PC because you got your mouse that you can just click around super quick. But you have your shoulder buttons and the triggers that you kind of flip between the different menus and the different selections that you can make between building and just looking at your economy and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's a little bit of annoying. You have to hold down a certain button to to get to certain menus and stuff like that. But it's not like super terrible. Um, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. Like I said, I've only played like about an hour on each system. Graphics look great. I mean, it's top down like any other city builder, 3D. I didn't see any issues, any stuttering, or I had a good amount on screen now. And fortunately, since this is on Game Pass, it just my save goes between the two, so I didn't have to like start over or anything like that. So that's kind of nice. But yeah,
So
just
so when you talk about it looking good on PC, like what graphics options and stuff did you have, and then talk a little bit maybe about on Xbox. Are you like is it 4K? Are you playing in 4K?
Yeah, I was playing on the Xbox. I'm playing on my TV, so that's 4K, and then my PC is 1440. Um, but I don't think I actually I didn't mess with the graphics at all, so they probably are at least on high, if not ultra, if that's a thing on this game or not. I'm not sure. So I didn't, like I said, I didn't get to mess with the graphics. Maybe I'll do that too, just to see if there's any difference. Um, and I mean, yes, everything's kind of rendered in 3D and and there's stuff like that, but it's not like super intense. And I know with those kind of games though too, since there's so much going on, there's people walking everywhere. All the buildings have like something open or closing or flipping or doing something. So there's all kinds of animations and stuff. But yeah, I haven't really seen any issues so far. At least not right now. My little village, I'll call it now, because it's not that very big.
So how good is how good is like the onboarding and the tutorial? Is it like tutorialism? I mean, did you have to go through an actual dedicated tutorial, or did the game just allow you to kind of start the campaign and then kind of give you the tutoring along the way?
They actually give you an option at the beginning if you want the tutorial on that, so that was kind of nice. So I chose to do it just because I don't know this world, and I didn't. If it was just like SimCity and stuff, like yeah, I could have figured it out, and City Skylines too. But this one, I don't know like the terminology and stuff because they call some stuff different. There's different terminology, obviously. But yeah, I chose to do the tutorial. So right now, everything pops up. I get the little pop ups every time something new happens or a new quest or a new ability that I have. There's challenges that or I think they call milestones that you hit every once in a while, and it tells you, it gives you a little blurb of what you can unlock and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of nice. So not intrusive, like I said. It's just like a little pop up. If I don't want to see it, I'll just hit the button and I can keep going if I want. But obviously you can go back and review those if you need to later on. So it's actually pretty good. And I like the option that you can skip it if you needed to, if you wanted to. That's nice.
So you talked a little bit about that you, I guess, haven't historically played these kind of games. So what's going on with you playing it now? Is it just a toe dip? Is it like an intentionality to like, hey, in this phase of my life as a gamer, I'm planning on checking out more of these things, or you specifically wanted to kind of pull the thread, and I'm asking the question right because I went through like some of those things, right? Like I was historically not a multiplayer PvP person, like, and then I kind of like hit a stage in my life where I was like, oh, I'm going to try this out, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a second, this is something I can actually do, right? And then it became kind of a thing. So kind of what was your approach on this game, or was it just kind of one of your like randomized Game Pass picks?
No, I mean I had seen that this was coming out, and I kind of looked into it a little bit and realized it was like a city builder. So, but yeah, I think at this point in my life, like I was just like, oh, you know what, I kind of, and I've been doing this a lot more too. With like I call it kind of a cozy game before, which sometimes it get kind of stressful because you got people like, hey, I need this and that, or you need to do this to unlock a certain building or something like that. So it gets a little kind of stressful, and I'll put that in quotes. But I mean, but more or less, it's just kind of like a relaxing thing for me. I can just sit there, do a few things, put down like a wood cutting building, or I think I just unlocked the coal. I forgot what they called it, but where it does the coal for you, which gives you energy and stuff. So, it's just kind of a relaxing thing for me right now. And like I said, I played a couple other ones before, so I was like, I'll try this one out too. And I've heard good things about the Steam world. So all the characters are like robotic, they're robots basically. Kind of that old school, kind of like a round body, round head, round arms and legs and stuff like that. They're not like humanoid. They're humanoid-ish, but not like a human, like proper. So kind of that aesthetic too, kind of called to me. But yeah.
See, that's not the answer I was expecting. I was expecting, it was available on Game Pass and it has crafting. So, right, like it is. I could see where it is
Yep.
in your wheelhouse a little bit more than some of the other SteamWorld pieces. I think it's fun that they kept the kind of aesthetic in terms of that kind of robotic pixel-esque kind of high def pixel piece that they've gone with for the other games.
Yeah.
So, do you think that so we talked a little bit back when we were playing Starfield about like that I was very much into kind of outpost building and you were very much not. Do you think this will? It's like I heard some kind of breadcrumbs in your voice track there that alluded to kind of some of the things that I felt when I was outpost building in Starfield. Is that do you think like playing this will drive you to like participating in more of that kind of meta within that other game?
It wasn't that I didn't like it. I just hadn't gotten to it yet in Starfield because I was so busy with everything else, and I still haven't. And I still go into Starfield every once in a while. I just don't have like a ton of time where I can like sit down and pay attention a lot to that game, which you kind of have to do. Which I found out later on, because even like sometimes side missions could take me like 15, 20 minutes because you have to go around and do all these different things. But so I have to carve out time for that game when I can. But yeah, I mean the building aspect. I probably will like the building aspect a little bit more in Starfield because here, when you go to build a building, it's just like boom, it springs up. You don't get to do, you don't get to, configure your stuff. And I don't know if it's like that in Starfield because, like I said, I haven't don't really done anything. Um, but I'm assuming it's a little bit more customizable, like how you can, fix things. And I don't know if you can do like the actual walls themselves or if it's just like a whole structure and stuff like that. But I think it's a little bit more involved in Starfield than it would be here. This is more like management type, like you just throw a building down. And like the other games that I played too of this kind, it's like I start off. I just kind of have everything like grouped together, like in a square, and I was like, it's probably not the best design that I could have done, And sometimes I'll just go back and restart it, or I'll just like knock stuff down because you can always sell stuff and then just re-add it somewhere else later. So I'll go and do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you do like get into more of that stuff when you go back to Starfield, they'll, like I said, I think you'll find some railroad tracks that are kind of similar. I mean, I know it seems like SteamWorld Dig, like it's on a larger scale, but basically the same kind of components of the do loop and the way it decomposes are very much the same. Like I said, that mining outpost that I built, like I built the mining outpost, but I had to build, but the mining facility was constantly mining, so I had to have place to store like the stuff, and then I had to periodically go back to like remove the stuff and then sell it. So that was another activity, and then I had to have power, and then the more stuff I added, I had to have more power, and then had to have power routing right to certain components, and then certain components will just kind of power because they're on the grid, but then certain components need actually a direct feed from. So I mean, there's a lot of kind of similar things just in terms of kind of managing supply lines and logistics. On a city grid, you're just doing it like at an outpost scale,
Right.
but but it still has kind of the same impact and has the same do loop.
Yeah, and I think the other thing else too that I've kind of gravitated toward these games, it's kind of like an evolution, at least for me, not for like these games itself. But I used to be a big RTS person back in the day, and still am to an extent. I don't play them as much as I used to. And this is kind of the same thing. It's kind of real time. You're doing everything, in real time, and but in here it's more a relaxing thing, not like an RTS where you're scrambling around, trying to get units over here and over there because people are attacking and stuff like that. Although I think I thought I saw something about defense in this game too. So maybe stuff comes and wild animals or something comes to attack your villages and cities. So that might be kind of part of it too, eventually.
All right, really cool. DBQ, any other questions for Tom?
Nope.
Okay, so next game on the rundown is on my end playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 on PC. Um, and the big question this year for this game is, who is this for? Is it still for the same crowd of people? I talked a little bit last week in terms of like, I'm while it may sound from a PR perspective like there's a reason to be angry and for people to grouse and for people who have played Modern Warfare 2 to feel like they're not getting a lot. And this isn't to ascribe a value to the price tag, right? Associated with it. Every consumer has to make that decision. I'll just say from a, being a member of the club, like I'm I'm glad that, like I said last time, I'm not starting from scratch. That I've got things that I'm adding on to. I can. And it's kind of the same thing that it is every single year, right? They move little bits and pieces, and it's actually it's interesting that now they're a part of Microsoft, because I feel like it's very much like Windows, right? When a new version of Windows comes out, all the stuff is there that you've historically used. In very rare cases has it actually been deprecated and just completely removed. It's still there, but for whatever reason, the engineers decide that they're just going to take it and move it and bury it and put it behind a curtain. So you have to go scurry around and look for it, and you have to Google around. And so this notion of like the weapons unlock trees and the progression, and it's kind of weird because at least last year, and again I haven't gone all the way through the UI, so it wouldn't surprise me that the old tree view is somewhere buried, but now it lays it out in a horizontal view, at least for the legacy weapons, which is fine, but it doesn't really present to you. I mean, I guess it's blown up, because now that I think about it, they used to always lay it out in that horizontal way, but but it was at a smaller scale, and you could see like several models of the weapon on the screen. Now, when you go into the weapon, it's just that one dedicated weapon and a horizontal progression path at the bottom if you're looking at weapons progression. Um, they're like I said, they're a little bits of like learning, and figuring out where all the stats are, because they've slightly shifted those around from last year, and things like that. Just going around and seeing, where challenges are and where things on the UI are just different. And so maybe it's a little bit of a Where's Waldo kind of challenge. Maybe it's the puzzle game meta. Haha, I got a secret. I don't find it particularly funny, but it's there. So it's weird that it's kind of like comforting when you find, oh, this is where that is now listed, or this is where that was. They've there are some things that are very similar to Call of Duty Mobile in a lot of ways. I continue to see like just a skosh of a convergence in that direction, and again, sometimes that's comforting, sometimes maybe that's not, depending on who you are and which consumer you are. Mirror aside on Call of Duty Mobile, and now we kind of see it replicated in Modern Warfare 3. I've always been impressed in Call of Duty Mobile how on a mobile game they're able to replicate a lot of these maps. Like you go onto Call of Duty Mobile, and then a map will come up in the rotation and be like, holy crap, that's like the exact same map that I played. And they're not just current, they're legacy maps from old. And now we're kind of seeing the same thing, right, in a current modern game. One of the things I commented on last year was it was a bit of I don't want to necessarily say a struggle, but it was a bit of a change in the geometry of the battlefield, right? In that historically you had kind of had, and we got Otacon Ocelot in the chat saying, what's up, guys? So good to see you, Otacon. Thanks a lot for joining in. We appreciate you. Last year's maps kind of took away this notion of every map kind of being, I don't want to call it one-dimensional, but kind of, there are small maps, there are medium range maps, and there are long range maps, and you pick a weapon for that type. It really instantiated these maps where, oh, if you're going to hang around outside, it's a sniper map. But then there are interior buildings where you can go in and you can scurry, and you can use the submachine gun effectively. And the whole game suddenly shifted a little bit to, you could stick around in the buildings and effectively use a submachine loadout, but you need to be conscious and very careful of, transiting back and forth between those buildings and not sticking around outside and moving in a certain way. And it really, I guess, really kind of elevated the game a little bit in a certain ways to making it a lot more of a combined arms kind of infantry game, right? In terms of, it's such a, I mean, I don't want all games to be the same, and I know Battlefield struggles with this, but in a lot of ways, like those maps really would have lent themselves to kind of a squad structure, right? Where, you could have been forced or cordoned to have, some people who had to take a heavy weapons loadout, and some people who had to take a sniper loadout, and some people who had, close CQB type of loadout. And it really lent itself to that. And in many ways, a lot of these older maps kind of are also the same. There are long range exterior areas where, if you're not moving quickly and you're not keeping your head down and you're not like highly varying your posture, right, from between sprint, prone, and squatted, and crouched, then you're gonna get popped by by a sniper. One of the things that's interesting too is like I caught myself doing this the other day, and I really wonder. It'll be interesting to really talk to some veteran Call of Duty players. Like I found myself I used to, as a player who was just coming back to it, I used to be obsessed with the kill cam. Like I would get popped and I would be like, I got to know where that guy is. Now I realize like I don't bother. Like if I get hit, I either have a decent idea where that shot came from, or I'm just like, well, I'll just figure it out. Like the most important thing is that I shave, those 2 or 3 seconds from respawning to get back in the game, because that metric, right, is a quantified spool that starts to add into like how much time you're on the battlefield and how many kills you can get and yada yada yada. So, it's been fun and interesting to kind of get back and see those maps again. I haven't really delved too much into the other modes. I think I mentioned last time, like this year more than any other, to me, I think because people feel like, I'm not sure how to exactly nail it down, but people feel however they feel or some kind of way about like this to a certain extent being a rehash of Modern Warfare 2, but just on older maps and the weapons being rehashed. And more than any year, like no one is playing the objective. Like I go into hardpoint maps and I go into domination maps. Like we were like so one of the I don't know LTEs, LTM limited time. I guess it's an LTM limited time modes. Of course, is Rust 24/7, which it's sometimes weird to call that an LTM because it seems like they always have that mode going. But they had domination on it's called Rustment. So it's a constant mosh pit of game modes going back and forth between Shipment and Rust. And I'm like, and it was domination on Shipment, and I'm like, this makes in Hardpoint on Shipment, I played that too. I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. Like, it's total chaos. There is no way that anybody has any time to pay attention. People paid a little bit more attention to objectives when we were doing domination, but when it was Hardpoint, like, it was just basically team deathmatch. I mean, the only reason to pay any attention to the Hardpoint, like, and actually you could tell because on Rust, games go pretty much relatively quickly, right? Because the kills rack up, right? And when it's a team deathmatch or a free for all, people get to those kill maxes pretty quickly for victory conditions. That hardpoint match on Rust like went on for like I was literally like tired sitting in my seat, and I'm like, holy cow, this thing is. And the reason it went on forever is because nobody was sitting on the hardpoint getting the hardpoint score up. So. But at the end of the day, what I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to look back at it and kind of as we've been filling out our superlatives check sheet, I've been looking through my list of games and going, well, I felt this way about a game or that way about a game, but just like I do that year of the Destiny 2 epiphany, I always pay attention to how much time did I spend in a game. And I'm like, I have to take those games that I spent a lot of time in and raise them up. And Modern Warfare 3 is coming in late. It's probably not going to have an impact on superlatives, but just overall in terms of how I'm finding myself landing with the game, it's going to be, rendering that opinion is going to be attuned to how much time. And right now I'm not put off from the game, right? And a lot of people, the dialogue would have you believe that they're made to feel like they don't want to play this game. And I just absolutely don't feel that way. Like I'm going through the same temptation, that I do almost every year, where I'm like, I would left to my own devices, I would play that game right until I got sick and tired of it, and then I wouldn't play anything else until I needed to take a break. And maybe to a certain extent the same, with Halo Infinite. So I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, been having a good time with it, and looking forward to continuing to play some more.
So, just a quick question. No, I didn't play these Modern Warfare, Modern Warfare 2 reboots or remakes, whatever they're called. So, and those multiplayers, did they just take the old maps from the originals and like soup them up, or were they like completely different maps?
So I'm not the best about like which map is a legacy map and which one's new because I fell off of Call of Duty at Modern Warfare 2 and didn't come back until the Modern Warfare reboot. So there's literally a span of almost a full decade that I didn't play Call of Duty multiplayer. My sense of it and what I understood from the conversations I had with it in the community is they were mostly new maps with pretty much each season like a legacy map would like get mixed back in. So yeah.
And then so now with this one, and I'm sorry if you might have mentioned this, I was distracted for a second. For Modern Warfare 3, do they bring Modern Warfare 1 and 2 maps into this one at all, or no?
So dangerous question, and here's the danger.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of maps like Rust and Shipment, and you'll have to fact check me on this because I'm not absolutely certain. What I believe is that Rust and Shipment, even going back to like original Modern Warfare reboot, let's say 2019.
Very confusing.
They have the names of those old maps, but they have been tweaked and modified, and their geometric layout is slightly different to significantly different from the older maps that they replicate. But as far as I can tell, what I think is in rotation for Modern Warfare 3 is they're all old maps. I mean, there are many maps that I recognize from Modern Warfare. So there's a number of maps from Modern Warfare. There's Favela, from the rooftop scene in Modern Warfare 2. There's and then there's Terminal from the airport scene in Modern Warfare 2. So like I didn't stay on that game for multiplayer. Not even I'm recognizing maps right from the campaign. But I think they are all legacy maps. And last note, I should make a note on performance. So I have been playing this game in 2560 by 1080p on an ultra widescreen monitor, and I'm getting and I of course I have ray tracing turned off and kind of all that silly stuff that you wouldn't want on in a PvP multiplayer shooter, and I'm getting I'm getting reported frames in excess of 200. So of course I'm playing on a 140. I think that's a 144. I'm playing on a 144 hertz monitor, so the max I'll get is 144 frames per second. But but my GPU is putting out on a 3070 Ti is putting out more frames right than my monitor can handle. So the games definitely perform it, and that's again another good thing to see right from a Modern Warfare title.
I saw it in the chat. Ocelot in the chat talks about like the yearly churn of Call of Duty versus an ongoing game in terms of kind of that continuation. Similar to what you all have talked about the last couple of weeks with dipping back into Halo Infinite. I think that piece that he brings up will be interesting to see how Activision handles that this year or the coming years, right? What that looks like if they move into more of that model. And also, I had to step away for a minute. I apologize, but I wonder, with your conversation about the community, right? Like, it feels like there was a lot of negative buzz around it at launch from like game media, but as with most things, once it kind of releases outside of that, once it gets outside of that release window, then the community kind of settles into what it is. And I mean, in some ways it feels as an annual Madden player, I can see where the community may wish for something more, but also enjoy what they have.
So you just created a small window for a rant. So this is like a currently ongoing thing, that a problem that I'm observing. Like I mean, the docket is well full of my complaints with the gaming media over the last few years, and it is just continues in a downward spiral. But here's my thing that I've noticed with this game in particular, and I've also come around to agreeing to with Starfield. Now it actually called out Games Radar and one of their freelancers who ran a story a couple of weeks ago about what was it, like Starfield players are or like Steam user reviews of Starfield players are hitting rock bottom or whatever, and I'm like, actually the current Steam user reviews are actually a few percentage points higher than they were about a month ago. Near the end of October. Like this is not news. Like this is just running a bad news ragging on Starfield for no reason. And yes, Steam user reviews are down. Yes, that on Steam at least, that game is basically not really well received from a critical standpoint. Now it charted NPD, last month and 2 months in a row, which I had predicted it wouldn't do. And so commercially, it's doing fine. But I'm like, this game is now, in that game, Starfield, is now 3 months on the street. I'm like, and we're still running bad news stories about reviews. I'm like, that is A, useless, B, not relevant, C, isn't news. And I'm like,
but it gets clicks.
Gets
right,
clicks,
right,
because it stirs controversy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing to a certain extent that I think we're seeing as we turn the corner with Modern Warfare 3, just as you pointed out, right? Much ado about it's a rehash and there's more maps. And I get it. Like those points aren't necessarily invalid. But as we always see, let's see how the thing tracks commercially. And, now we're also starting to see a lot of sentiment. Like you have a lot of players who were in that bow wave right where I dipped out, that 10-year arc where I said I didn't play. There are lots of people who did play. There's lots of people who fell in love with the series at that point. And so for them, bringing back those maps is huge nostalgia, and kind of just like Ocelot is saying, now you kind of have an iteration of Call of Duty that's essentially being supported for 2 years. And that is going to land differently with some people and make them feel a different way about it. I know from this year, what I've seen is I kind of feel the same way. Not necessarily agreeing with the $60, $70 price tag, but what I will say is, yeah, I would like to have my weapons cache, roll from year to year, with some level of progression, and some things that I retain, kind of a la Destiny 2, rather than this constant rinse, wash, repeat of having to start all over. And I get it, and that is kind of part of the uniqueness, and maybe you can call it like part of the charm of Call of Duty is like there is a, and again, but I think I could see you melding the two. Like, yeah, it's going to make people super angry, but maybe it's one of those games where you wipe the board, once a year, and you say, it's like a football season. Like you start over. Yeah, you were great like at season 4 last year, but now everybody starts over again at 0 and has to work their way up to prestige. I don't know what impact that has on progression, but it would kind of be like Ocelot has said, and I'm saying, it would be nice to keep, some number of weapons. Maybe let's just say there's, I can't remember what the number is. Let's say there's 40 weapons platforms, and maybe you're allowed to designate like a certain number, each year that you retain, like 10. Right, and maybe that rotates, right? So people can't like find stick with the OP weapons like the equivalent, like the M16, right? And keep retaining that one, and it periodically falls out or something like that. But that would make it interesting. But yeah, I would like something that gives me a bit of a hook, towards long-term investment as well. I get it. This year is allowing us to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an ebb and flow with. I mean, they're not just Call of Duty, but even like at the live service games and stuff like that, where you're going to get a hit, every once in a while, or every couple, 1 or 2 games. And when I say hit, like it's and people have seen this for a while, like, oh, this it's the Call of Duty because this is this game is bad, or something like that for the last 10 years, and it's still going. Like, 1 year, yeah, I might make 1.5 billion, and then next year it's going to make 999 million. Like, okay, Yeah, it went lower, but I mean, you're still almost at 1 billion there anyways. So, people obviously still buy. You still got people, just like Madden, they buy it every year. It's just, we've talked about it before. It's just their one or two games that they buy every year. So, and they just want to do that. So, and obviously that's still going on because it's still a huge hit every year.
It is very, very much like Formula One. And so if you're a Formula One watcher, what you know is what they do is each year, let's say there's 100 rules that prescribe, right, how you operate within Formula One. Every year they pick 25 to 33 of those rules to change. And they make everybody go off and build a new car and re-engineer it. And they do things so that like the most wealthy teams, McLaren and Ferrari and Williams and Mercedes and teams like this in the past, that they're not given an inherent advantage supposedly, right? Walking in the door for the new season, and they try and level the playing field so that you have things like Red Bull, who have came out of nowhere 5-6 years ago, were nobodies, and they've slowly climbed up. So it's kind of like that, right? They pick things to do, to tweak, to kind of try to level the playing field, right, and give new players a chance, and kind of knock kick some of the legs out from underneath the table of the veteran players. And that's kind of part of the charm, or part of the institutionalized approach to the game. So, but overall, I'm having fun. It's going to be interesting to see how the season goes, because now you have the opportunity to spice things up by bringing in some of the newer maps, right, or just introducing new maps, on top of the legacy baseline. So it's pretty cool. Tao, you have also been playing a thing that to me is very much kind of akin to a game as a service, and from one of at least my favorite publishers, who proves their stick-to-itiveness by continuously delivering new content for their titles. Why don't you talk us through your next game?
Yeah, so I jumped back into Riders Republic from Ubisoft, and actually I had played a little bit the week before. I just didn't talk about it only because I only played it like maybe at the most like an hour over like a couple days, and it was more of than those 2 sessions were like me just trying to figure out the controls again, because it's not super complicated, but it's a little bit different than some of the other kind of like extreme sports type of games.
So what's changed since the last time? Like, I downloaded it recently when the Skate edition came out to see like if it was a free update, but it's a add-on that you have to buy for the skate park aspects. I think of the 3 of us, you played it the most when it was out and have come back to it the most frequent. Like, does it feel like they have continued to add things to it? Does it feel more expansive or different?
I mean, just gameplay wise, it feels pretty much the same, other than like like you mentioned, like skate stuff now, or skateboard stuff. They've added like snowmobile races, and I think trick things too. That's paid, which I didn't realize either, because I was going to go do one, and I was like, oh hey, you got to buy this pack. I'm like, oh okay. And when you started up, did you see like the skate thing like come up, like hey, you can go and do this? Okay, so I didn't know if like
No,
I
I didn't
actually
see
had.
it come up. Like, I saw the trailer for it, but
Okay.
then because I had like the trial on PlayStation 5, and I have only played it on Xbox, so I tried it on PlayStation 5, and after the kind of trailer, then it dumps me right back in the original kind of introduction orientation that it was when the game launched. What, 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Yep.
it popped up there, and it like started to I forgot, I think it was like Suki or something. It was like the main character that kind of guides you through the skate park part. And it popped up, and it did a little thing for me. I was like, oh wait, and that's what I was thinking too. I was like, I thought this was like a paid DLC, but it seemed like I was able to go to it. I didn't go to it yet, just because I was still trying to figure out the controls. And then I got distracted, of course, by shiny things on the map, as these games are. So I didn't get to go to that part yet. So I don't know if I can fully get into it now, or if it's just going to tell me, hey, you got to pay for it, like I did with the snowmobile races I was going to do. And those snowmobile races I just saw, like I was just like scrolling through the map, and dropping on points, and I was like, oh hey, snow, like I know they had put that in there, and I was going to do it, but it said I had to pay. So it's curious. I'm going to try to go to that skate park, I think, the next time I go to play, just to see if I can get it or not. Or maybe, I don't know if there was ever like a version or an edition where like it gave you DLC or future DLC. Maybe I bought that. I don't remember doing that, but it's
Yeah, there was
possible.
like a season pass. There was like an ultimate edition at one point in time. Yeah. which might have included the snowmobile, but I think the skate stuff is a totally separate piece.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So I'll definitely have to go and check that out. But just uh, I've just been kind of at first I was kind of just riding around the map and just kind of just doing my own thing, just trying to get used to stuff. And now I started like this week I started actually doing races and doing trick stuff, just regular like bike stuff and all that kind of things. So nothing too crazy. But yeah, I definitely want to try to see if I can get to that skate park or maybe I don't know, maybe they gave it to me because it was like Game Pass thing or something. I don't know. Even though it's not part of Game Pass, but I'll have to try and figure that out. But other than that, yeah, I haven't really seen. I mean, all the controls seem like the same thing. Like I don't think they've done anything with the controls or anything like that. Of course, you can still customize your character, which is the customization. While I really like it, it's a little bit of annoying because you can customize each sport basically, your character for each sport. So there's a separate one for skating or for biking and snowboarding or skiing, whichever one you do there, and then a couple of like the flight suit and stuff like that. So I wish I can just like say, hey, make this the default for everything, but you have to go in there and like change everything, individually, which is for me like I've mentioned this before, like for Call of Duty and even for Fortnite, like I'll go in there and change and there's like presets you can do now. Go in there and change my person. I'll just pick a preset and go with it. But here you literally have to go and you can change your like each like hands and the gloves and pants and stuff like that. So it's just a little bit much, but I don't know. I just found that little bit annoying. It's not like game breaking or anything. That's just on me because I like the customization part of it. But controls still seem the controls were always a little bit weird, and I think there's different styles too you can pick from, and maybe I'll kind of mess with the styles going forward also, because you kind of use when you're doing like the biking. I think it was the same for like snowboarding too. You obviously use left to control your guy, and then you use the right control stick. I think it's like to do different tricks, which it was always kind of weird to me that you would do it like that. But just coming from like skate and even like Tony Hawk and stuff, where it was all button presses and not using the stick. It was just always kind of weird to me, to use the stick to do stuff like that. And I don't know. And sometimes like when you're doing flips and stuff, it seemed a little weird. Like even though I'm pressing, like you do like down up or up down, you could do a flip, but sometimes it didn't work, or maybe I wasn't holding it or something. Like it was just kind of weird. So I don't know, just messed up. But yeah, I only
still
played.
use the right because it still has you can either use buttons for tricks or you can use the stick, right? Like there are
That's
two
why
different
I think.
options.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go and try the other options to see if I could just use the buttons because that's what I'm more used to. Seems more intuitive, at least to me, just because that's what I grew up kind of doing. But yeah, just doing different races and it's. I mean, the map you're on is pretty much just kind of downhill, so it's either kind of like grassy or snowy. I guess there's a desert area too. I didn't go into that part too much this time around, this playthrough, but so it's you get a little variation and stuff, but it's still fun to play.
All right, and the last game in segment one tonight is another one from me. I've been continuing to play Spider-Man 2 on my PlayStation 5. Obviously, like I said, in the past, one of my favorite things to do is just the ability to get into the grind. The grind loop is right, wrong, or indifferent. Hate me if you do. It's just one of those things that I appreciate in games. I like grind loops. I like grind loops that feel good in their game mechanics.
Yeah, but this is a grind loop that lets you just swing around a city, right? Like this is a grind loop that can be really enjoyable.
Yeah, and the grind loop that I'm participating in is continuing to farm for suits, and now, the grind loop actually in certain ways, like I felt like in the first game, the grind, if you chose to grind for suits, you weren't really afforded enough of the different types of currencies, and like I mean, again, sometimes it sits well with me, sometimes it doesn't. Like this game has like. It feels like it has the same number of currencies as like Destiny 2, early Destiny 2, not Destiny 2 when Destiny 2 went off the deep end and had like a dozen different currencies. But there's lots of different currencies. But the game again provides you enough to do in the game to farm for each of those different types of currencies, to the extent where now I can afford to not just grind for suits, but also grind for gadgets and suit tech, suit capability. Um, and the way I play the game is like, I think I've mentioned it before, every time I sit down to do a session, I kind of flip a coin and I say, am I going to mainline the campaign, or am I going to farm for suits? And more often than not, that coin comes up tails, and I spend time farming for suits. So, I've lots of very cool ones now. I'm guessing that I'm over leveled for where I am in the campaign. It's kind of weird and interesting how PlayStation tracks it, because the game says that I'm 26% through, but PlayStation says that I'm 60% through. So I think PlayStation is tracking me through content, and the game is tracking me through the campaign. So one thing I want to talk about tonight is Miles' hair. So again, talking about the media, much ado was made about Miles' hair. And gamers on social media also rendered a lot of, I like how this character model looks, I don't like how that character model looks. I hit a point in the campaign just kind of listening to the story, and one of the things that I was suddenly reminded, I'm like, Miles is a 16-year-old kid. He's in high school, and yes, the fact that he's a superhero kind of causes us to kind of think of him, as much beyond his years. But let's just remember that when young men are going through high school, like, a principal thing that they're trying to settle on with their identity is trying out different hairstyles, right? For people who have hair, and seeking to do something unique. And like many often of those hairstyles, like, are experiments, right? They're highly stylistic. They are highly in the zeitgeist of fashionability, and they don't often last. I mean, you look back at your high school pictures now, and like there was never any hairstyle or fashion style or whatever that pervaded right over the decades to, how I look or dress now. So that's what I hit that point in the story, and I was like, again, we hyperfixate on like Miles, like, and I'm like, but this isn't him. As even an adult, this is just a phase, right? And we didn't kind of look at it through those lenses. And like some of the things that were said, in this particular chapter, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. We kind of need to look at it like that. But like I said, I'm feeling like so many of the fights now they're not easy. But like a lot of the fights, particularly, I talked about how I felt like the hunters were more difficult. Like at the levels that I'm at now, some of the fight, I'm hitting fights now where I have both hunters and like the fire people, like sometimes, or like common street thugs, but then there are hunters mixed in because like I swung by like an arms deal that was going down between the two factions. Beating up common street thugs now is definitely kind of tilting towards the realm of easy. I did just play through like that big set piece that we saw in the trailer, right? So the high speed chase on water vehicles that we saw in the first trailer, and that that forces you to kind of traverse at speed, and then take out like those vehicles one by one. I find myself much more so. I mentioned it last time I talked about the game. I started off the early part of the game really heavily engaging in the stealth aspects because I had to, right? Because jumping down into a throng of hunters that's probably going to end badly. But at level 26, 27, 28 now, like I'm like, I screwed up a part of a mission where I shot a bird with a web because he was like directly across from me, and I was like, oh, I probably should have handled that differently if I wanted to be stealthy. But then I was like, whatever. So, I shot the bird with the web, tipped him off. Everybody, got all up in arms. I wound up also missing a jump and like falling down. And I was like, okay, whatever, fight's on. One of the things that was interesting is number one, one thing I didn't realize is the aerial tricks that you do, right, when you release the web and then hit the square button, and you do like the forward pike or the back flip, the left and right. I didn't realize you could actually miss landings with those.
Oh, really? I always feel like they're flourish versus.
That's what I always thought. I always assumed that Spider-Man would always land on his feet, but I was actually doing it today, and he actually, like, if you don't pull out of those tricks before you hit the bottom, like, he'll actually miss the jump. And I didn't realize that that the suits then pick up damage from that. Like, so
Cosmetic damage?
Yeah. It's like a car wreck, on in a game that does car modeling of damage. So he'll have like rips and tears, like in the suit, and dirt marks and things like that from falls. So it's very neat. The last thing I'll mention is, tonight I have been playing in quality mode or fidelity mode, the entire time. Tonight I flipped it to performance mode. I locked my system to 1440p. Picked like the game preset for performance, then went into the game. There's a surprising number of graphical tweaks, again, nowhere near, what you have on PC. But there are a surprising number of graphical tweaks that you could do. You can turn ambient occlusion on and off. I think VSync is an option in there. So there's a lot of very kind of PC leaning things you could do to tailor your experience. So I turned it off, and also you can enable or disable the 120 hertz mode. So I kicked it over to performance. Again, this is a game that sometimes huge fans don't like to talk about it, but when you do things like that, you could definitely see to your eye like a difference in the graphical fidelity. It's not, that game still in that mode looks better than 80% of other games that are on the market in their quality modes. But you could definitely tell the difference between quality and between fidelity and performance mode. So, but yeah, I had continuing to have a great time with it. Love the suits. Investing now in the gadgets and tech as well. And I have no problems taking the approach of like maxing my level before I ever get back to the campaign, and then just kind of Central Park making the campaign a Central Park stroll. So. Anything else about newer games you guys want to mention before we roll on to the news? All right, well, let's get into it. First news at the top of segment 2: Activision Blizzard planned to open a Steam of mobile store. This came out in the Epic versus Google fight. This story over on GameIndustry.biz by Sophie McAvoy. Activision Blizzard planned to open its own mobile game store before being acquired by Microsoft, court documents from the Epic Games and Google antitrust jury trial show. According to The Verge, internal emails and documents from 2019 revealed 2 plans made by Activision Blizzard to strengthen its position in the mobile games market. It goes on to describe a series of emails that were exchanged between Activision Blizzard's CFO and Epic Games' CEO, Tim Sweeney, talking about how they would take a smaller revenue share in terms of their transaction fee than some of the other bigger stores. That was what they were going to do in order to be competitive against the native Google Play Store and iOS App Store. They were planning on starting on Android first and then going to iOS. They were planning on piloting it in the US and starting with Activision Blizzard's own games like Candy Crush, and then expanding from there. Lots of other details now, but obviously, now Activision is part of Microsoft, but we have also heard, rumblings that this is a key Microsoft strategy, that their hope is to, they haven't provided a ton of detail of what the plan is, and I still question the plan very much so, being like, in order for you to do that, you are going to have to rely on court proceedings going down to the direction of forcing Apple and Google to open the playing field, right, to other app stores or other services, or deliver everything through the browser, which to me is it's just a substandard mobile experience. So we'll see how that unfolds and which direction that goes. DBQ, any thoughts or comments on that news story?
I think that I'm just going to pair this with the news story that is kind of following up on the Microsoft end from Friday, December 1st, over at Game Developer, formerly Gamasutra, from Chris Kerr, that Microsoft is actively working on an Xbox mobile marketplace. So that idea, as you said, right, like what this ends up looking like, how they end up kind of rolling this out. But certainly it seems like whatever Activision was working on gets rolled into this as well. But it really will be a question of what that interface looks like and how that works. But I could also see a solid storefront from Microsoft also could be a real hook for Game Pass and cloud gaming as well, right? Like there could be multiple ways to kind of approach some of those things. So
Yeah, there's definitely potential, and they have lots of things like that kind of elevate a presentation layer kind of in front of the operating system, like like they do working with Samsung for decks. We have other instances, or at least on Android, of a fork with something like like the Amazon store. So I don't know that what comes out would look exactly like that, because I don't think Microsoft is going down the path of hardware. But it kind of would. I don't know that it would be a horrible idea necessarily for Microsoft to do a fork of Android and have a Game Pass tablet, of an 8-inch and then a 10-inch, right? That had their own storefront and enabled them to serve up everything through Game Pass, in that manner. So but we'll see. Tao, any other comments on that story? All right. Well, why don't you take your time that you would have participated in that and lead us right down the path with a concurrent and parallel story about games in Game Pass that are now here for December.
Yeah, so they had this was the news from Xbox Wire, just announcing some of the games that are coming out in December, and there's a few things on here that I thought were kind of cool that they are releasing. So Remnant from the Ashes, which I believe was on there before, and also the sequel Remnant 2, which came out in July of this year. About 5 months ago, are up on the store right now. So it's actually kind of nice because I was actually looking at eyeing those games actually not too long ago. So I'll definitely give those two a try. Kind of first person or third person shooter, action shooter. Both of those games published by Gearbox and developed by Gunfire Games. So those two a different one. Check out one day. Spirit of the North and SteamWorld Build, which, as I mentioned before, our hit came out already on December 1st. Clone Drone in the Danger Zone, December 5th. Rise of the Tomb Raider on December 5th, which is, I think that's been on there multiple times actually at this point. While the Iron's Hot, another one on December 5th. World War Z Aftermath, also on December 5th, which I believe Aftermath, I believe, adds some modes or maps or something in there. It's a little bit something extra from just the original release, because I know World War Z was on there, I believe, initially when it came out, or not too long after, on Game Pass. Goat Simulator 3, there's number 2. I played the first one. This is kind of a goofy third person, or third goat, if you want to say it that way. Kind of adventure. That's all. I'll just say adventure because it's a very weird game. If it's anything like the first one, Against the Storm, December 8th. Tin Hearts, December 12th. There's a couple of that's Tin Hearts is a Lemmings like puzzler, and then there's a couple in here that were kind of like crafting and city building. So I might check some of these out. And then December 14th, you get Far Cry 6, which actually I might jump into that one because I haven't played a Far Cry in a long time, like since 2, I think. I haven't tried any of them after that, just because I just never got around to them. They look like, and I know Game, you've played a lot of them throughout the years. They look fun. Uh, Maybe more of a first person Just Cause ish. At least some of the later ones, just because, and not so much because of the wacky gear and stuff. More of you have to go into a certain area to clear out, or do certain things. So they always look like they can be kind of fun to play. So, and then 2 games that are actually coming to Game Pass Core on the 6th, so in a few days. Chivalry 2 and Total Reliable Delivery Service. And Game Pass Core is the new Gold, basically, Xbox Gold. So you get those 2 new games along with 25 other ones, I believe, or ish, games that are on the Game Pass Core. So, and then you have some updates, Team Fight Tactics, and Fallout 76 that you can get on the 6th. I'm sorry, Team Fight Tactics is available now, and then on the 5th for Fallout 76. So some of the games coming out this month. Anything on there, gentlemen, that you might try or look interesting?
I think the other piece I want to call out here is that at the very end of this, you get a couple things that are leaving, and Chain Echoes. So Chain Echoes was the kind of indie RPG Chrono Trigger like game that came out back late December of last year. So it was kind of late after everything else. It launched day of on Game Pass, and as it hits its kind of 1 year mark, it is coming off Game Pass as well. So lots of kind of RPG kudos and incredibly high ratings for the indie project Chain Echoes.
Yeah, for me, I didn't really particularly see anything that really jumped out at me. I mean, it's cool that Rise of the Tomb Raider is coming back. For people who, for newer gamers who haven't, played that game, but that'll, good for them. But most of the stuff I either have access to elsewhere or I've already played.
Have either of you played Remnant or Ashes or 1 or 2? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah, so I should either have already played or just am not interested.
Don't care, right? Yeah.
I don't want to be harsh and say I don't care.
It's like, wow, you really.
That's fine.
I can't, while the iron's hot, and some of these other ones, I never heard you talk about that. But yes, right. You've played the ones you're interested in, and know that the other ones are for a different audience.
Yeah, Remnant and Remnant 2 have a little too much of a Souls smell about them. But just there are other things that I'd rather invest my time playing. But from all accounts and from what I can see, they are good games, if not great games. And I think Remnant 2 is in a few categories for the TGAs this year.
Yep. And actually, co-op games too. I didn't realize they were co-op. You could play up to 3 people. So.
Yeah, I've got a few friends who co-op their way through the campaign for the first one. I think they're doing it for the second one as well.
Nice.
Cool. So DBQ, we started off the news segment with an article by GameIndustry.biz, and now we talked last week when we talked about the Steam Deck OLED about how the Digital Foundry review kind of figured heavily into that, and now we come to find that, unfortunately, we may not have those sites around as references for much longer.
Right. Or the sites still may exist, but the content of them may be different or stripped down, right? As we're talking about the state of games journalism and games media, that many of these sites we hit multiple times here on the show because of the quality of what they produce, right? Eurogamer and GameIndustry.biz, Rock Paper Shotgun in terms of more essays and reflective pieces. We've even pulled news from VG247, which is all part of the network of sites that is owned by ReadPop, and they are seeking a buyer. So this is a story on GameIndustry.biz about GameIndustry.biz. It's written by Christopher Dring. It is basically ReadPop, who is the subsidiary, the owner of the sites. They are looking for for a buyer for their gamer network business. So the sites related to the gamer network, which is GameIndustry.biz, Eurogamer, VG247, Rock Paper Shotgun, Dicebreaker, also outside of Xbox, Digital Foundry, as we talked about as well. So we don't know what this looks like. I think the fact that they are out there and this is public means that oftentimes, and correct me, Game Logic, if this is not the logical read here, oftentimes we don't hear about seeking. We hear about when something is already sold, that deals have been worked out, that it's been sold in the background, that the seeking piece is more of a sign from a business perspective that the parent company is looking to either offload this or looking for, right? This is looking to get it off its books, looking to find some investor for it, rather than some investor came looking to them to pick it up. Like, this is more about moving it off their books than it is about somebody's interested in picking it up. And so, which goes back to your comment of how much of this will still exist, what happens if there's not a buyer, and how do they, as we've seen in the consolidation of other gaming media, what does that look like in terms of the quality that ends up being produced? These sites have good name recognition and traffic related to their name and their IP, but what happens when that content shifts as well?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's kind of the only thing that they own, right? It's not. This isn't brick or mortar. You're not buying a warehouse full of boxes of capital equipment.
Yep.
So one of the things to look out for in these is very often it also happens that these things get bought, and the thing that continues operating underneath the name is a completely and entirely different set of people. They sometimes they get rid of the people, sometimes the thing is bought, and then kind of like through a clearinghouse and changes hands, and then the label goes up and the brand goes up somewhere else. And like I said, it's different people. One of the big tech sites that I used to follow, I think it was GXXP, who was actually run by a guy named, I think, Malik, who was like a big technologist and really followed the mobile industry. And when GXXP got went down for a while and then came back up, but it was like entirely different, and it was nowhere near like the kind of quality. And I think eventually he got that back, but by then like the user base had been eroded so much that he had to do something completely different with it. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and kind of watch how this thing goes on. But as you mentioned, some of these sites, in a world where gaming journalism is on the wane, in terms of how professional they are and how fact-based they are, and how well stories are written that actually have corroboration. And I mean, quite frankly, I know, don't take this as a shot. I know there are some authors that different members of the cast like ascribe to, but I mean, in my opinion, like a lot of these, like GI.biz is head and shoulders hands above Forbes's coverage or Bloomberg's coverage, or Washington Post coverage, or things of that nature. So it'll be a real impact if these things go away.
Okay, so wait, before we get off this topic, because I don't disagree with you, but I want to turn the phrase of that games journalism is on the wane, that I think that commercial games media journalism is on its way out, if it hasn't already gone, right? Like, I think what we've seen through Patreon, through a couple of the other, that not only with where we lost people, right? Like Kotaku and The Escapist, people that are leaving commercial sites and spinning up kind of community run, patron run things. Substack is, you're subscribing to individual authors. So there is journalism happening out there. There is game writing that is happening out there, but not in the same kind of space that it once was, in a commercially profitable space. And I think that's for me, as somebody who has followed game journalism since the conception of GameSpot and EGM number 3, right? Like, it's a disappointing place, but I'm finding that information. I just have to go different places, and it is in not darker corners, right? It's not as prominent, right? It doesn't have that same piece. But in terms of what were the popular sites, what are still the popular game sites, it is, guides and the clicks, like we were talking about with your Kotaku article before. Like, I think I find myself less and less going to the gaming sites that I have spent 15 years, 20 years going to, and more so looking for people with voices that are providing some insight.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I guess I'd dial up on top of that the difficulty, right? And part of it you mentioned, right? Those things aren't going to be presented to you, right? You're not going to see them, reposted all over Twitter, right, and easily find them. You're gonna have to dig and scratch and hunt. I use FeedBurner, which kind of gives you the top 100 RSS feeds and the websites that back them, and like those types of outlets like don't come up right in that top 100 feed. So the other thing I would mention is then the other part of it that makes that difficult is just where games journalism kind of lines up, right? And I almost hate to use this term across the entirety of the hierarchy, right? But you have the big commercial sites, right? I would call it at the top, and that's mainly a statement by volume. You have these sites that are kind of in between, which, and quite honestly, I'm a bit arrogant and egotistical, but I think we participate in games journalism, and this outlet and this podcast are essentially a reflection of that, and kind of what we try to do, and we ascribe to a certain set of rules that nobody enforces upon us, right? But we believe, right, from our charter that we have a incumbent responsibility to align to a certain, behavior, right, instead of rules. But then you have the rest of YouTube, which, hugely popular, far more popular than our outlet and site, but they don't ascribe to any notion of rules. It's a complete dystopia out there. But they are very popular and very loud. And so you get those people, which, and we I mean, I think, like I said, we ascribe to the same kind of behavioral charter, but we don't do this full time, and we obviously aren't like anything like where the guys from The Escapists went, or, where even, who are the guys that I'm thinking of?
Parent Site? What are you thinking about?
Giant Bomb.
Giant Bomb. Yeah, right. So Nextlander with
or
Brad and Vinny and Alex. Yep.
Yeah, or Rebel FM or anything like that. But those people get squeezed, so tightly between and pancaked between the big commercial sites and outraged YouTube, right? That it is, like you mentioned, it's very hard to find them. So next news story over on Shack News. Rocket Racing is an I'm sorry, Tal, did you have anything else to mention about that? Or sorry, DBQ to YouTube. Sorry.
No. I'll let Tal go if he has anything to feedback in on there.
No. I mean, I think you guys pretty much said it all. And I'm not. While I go and visit these sites, some of the bigger name sites, it's not so much for the articles, and it's more of like the preview stuff. And I like to just see like the screenshots and the trailers that these places put out.
You don't have to defend yourself, right? Like,
I don't know. I'm just saying, like I'm not the normal person to really visit any of these sites, really, because like I said, I'm just going there for the content, as far as like just screenshots and videos and previews. I don't like to read these articles and people are saying one thing or another, and I go to another site and they're saying the complete opposite, and I go to another site, everything's different. So it's like, just give me, I'll make my own decision. Like I don't need, and I'm not saying that's I'm doing it the right way or anything like that, or the wrong way. It's the way I do it. It's just the way I consume all this content.
Great. No, thanks. And I think the only I jumped in here is because the next news story being from Shack News is, to me, another great example of a website that was built up, right? You had Garnet Lee kind of bring that up into a higher tier than it was before. It got sold off, and it is a shell of what it was at that time. It is a news place, but it still functions, right? It has gone through a couple different iterations, but that IP going back to, yes, we own the address, but not necessarily what the vision of what that is going to be. So it's another good example of how those kind of go through cycles in terms of what that site might be.
Yeah, I mean, Shack News is a name that kind of resonates with me with hard OCP, kind of sites that were coming up at the time. Of course, they're hard OCP is kind of no more, right? It's a forums, So, but we've also seen the rise of things like Tom's Hardware, right? Which does good work. So, so over on Shack News by Ozzy Meja, Rocket Racing is an arcade racer in Fortnite from the Rocket League studio. So here it'll be interesting to see the different takes that Tao and I have from this particular, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, because we're mixing my racing with Tao's Fortnite and Rocket League, and we're going to see how this turns out. Psyonix's next project will be playable within Fortnite, and it releases next week. Again, both of these companies now owned by Epic. While Rocket League, I mean, Fortnite, is Epic, but Psyonix now owned by Epic. While Rocket League continues to roll along nearly 10 years after its initial release, the team at Psyonix appears to be expanding to a new project. Unsurprisingly, the next Psyonix joint is being done in conjunction with Epic Games and keeps the studio in its racing wheelhouse. Have slight umbrage with that, but slightly more surprising is that the game will be playable within Epic's Fortnite juggernaut. The game is called Rocket Racing, and it's set to release in the next week. So actually, before I go to you, Tao, I want to go to you, DBQ. What do you think about the possibility that this is a way forward for Epic? Fortnite is the leading example. It doesn't get the credit that it should. It is the only, in my opinion, example of someone who has effectively actually brought unto being the metaverse. Is the approach?
I don't even think it's an if. I think, right, this is the direction. This makes the most sense for Epic. Like, this is Fortnite. The hub of Fortnite is where the mass of users are. So why not? We saw the success of the kind of one-off concerts and special events. Why not start populating that with, other types of game experiences that you may, right? Is it in the same launcher? Do you actually get there in a 3D space? But yes, I could see. It's also seems completely logical for all of the other places that Epic owns and all the other gaming properties that have seen some layoffs in this last round of things. Like, the more that they can funnel those into an Fortnite launcher, or however they want to call it, bring some prominence to that. And maybe it all has to have, maybe it shares the kind of graphical style of Fortnite in the rocket racing, right? Or that it has to fit within a certain kind of frame of the Fortnite universe, which rocket racing certainly could, right? You're not going to bring in Dauntless into this, which is owned by another company that developed by another company that Epic owns. Saw some layoffs in the last couple of weeks or so as well, but that's more of a Monster Hunter kind of fantastical piece. So I could certainly see that this seems not only logical from like a user perspective, but also something from a business perspective that would be beneficial in terms of revenue generating.
It makes sense now, right, for the overhaul to UE5. So Tao, your thoughts? My point of what I take umbrage to, I don't Rocket. To me, Rocket League is not racing. But having laid that indictment on the floor at your feet, Tao, I'll let you go ahead and let me know what you think about this.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably smart to put Rocket in the title still, just because people know Rocket League. They know it's huge still. They're still doing tournaments and all this other stuff. But I think this, along with they also announced hold on a second, the Fortnite Festival, which is used in Harmonix's development studio, bringing basically Rock Band into Fortnite also. And then you have their partnership with Lego. They're going to do Lego Fortnite, which is, I'm still not exactly sure what this is. I keep seeing like it's basically kind of a Minecraft-y like world that you can go into. You can build, and with Legos obviously, but there's still that Fortnite island and Fortnite world around it. It's not like everything is not just like Lego shaped. Like, there's certain areas here that are Legos and like the buildings and stuff, and there's obviously the characters will be the minifigs, but the rest of the island is still pretty much kind of Fortnite-y looking, in Unreal Engine 5. So and I think this is their next step from their, what I call the Roblox launcher, which is basically they started to let the community were making their games, and it really looks like Roblox the way they laid out in the UI. Whereas there's a bunch of mini games and all kinds of other whatever kind of games that people want to make in Unreal Engine, 5 now, 4 still also, there's the games up there. They're going to start bringing these these other experiences like rocket racing and Lego and all this other stuff, and like these meatier games now that they have Unreal Engine 5. And like I said, I think it's smart that they left rocket in there for rocket racing. It's not soccer. It's not, obviously, it's not, hoops or, all these other goofy modes they have in Rocket League. It's just straight up racing. Like, it's like, reminded me, it looked like a lot like the 2K. Was it 2K racing? Was that the one that came out recently?
Hot Wheels.
Well, that one too, but there was that other one.
Yeah, it was the Lego 2K race or
Yeah.
2K Drive, because now it.
Yeah, or Hot Wheels, those kind of racing games. Hot Wheels like hit it big, when it came out. I don't think anybody was expecting it. It was like, oh, it's just another, Hot Wheels racing game, whatever. But it was actually, that one kind of, took off also. And this seems like a lot like it. Like, it's just pretty much racing. I don't think there's any kind of battling as far as I saw in the little bit of snippets that they showed of it. And it looks like they're going to have like a full trailer during the what do you call it? The Game Awards coming up this week. And then this is supposed to come out. I think that's Friday. The Game Awards Friday. So this comes out, I think that same day, actually. Because then the festival part of it, is coming out Saturday, the day after. And Lego's coming out Thursday. So they're kind of like, breaking it up a little bit. But, they have, even though they show the Rocket League car in there, like the main, I forgot what it's called in Rocket League, but like the main car they use, that's kind of like their default car. There's all these other cars that you can have in there too that I've never seen in Rocket League, and it's just kind of their own thing. So they're kind of like merging the two for now, at least, and just trying to get people into it and playing it. And from what I've heard and read, and nothing officially yet, but I think you're gonna be able to use some of your Rocket League, like the skins and stuff, in this rocket racing. So that's another part of it too, where, hey, you're talking about Modern Warfare and Call of Duty, like, hey, I can't bring my stuff over, year to year, but here they're giving you the chance to use that stuff you have in Rocket League in another game, or at least part of it, some of it. Probably not the licensing stuff, licensed IPs, like movies and stuff, which they do have in there, like Knight Raider and Ghostbusters and stuff. Like, you probably won't be able to bring that over, but just like kind of their generic skins that they've made up, I'm sure you'll probably be able to bring over and do that kind of stuff. So I think it's a smart move.
I do as well. So our last story in the rundown is over on PC Invasion. Bethesda is bizarrely replying to negative Starfield reviews. Something that developers almost never do is respond to bad reviews of its games. It's just a bad look. But a few days ago, Starfield fans noticed that Bethesda was bizarrely replying to negative reviews of its space RPG. Normally, developers don't interact with reviews in the slightest. Many gamers online are now reacting negatively to Bethesda's replies. This first one from Reddit. Bethesda is responding to bad reviews of Starfield, leaving gamers confused and annoyed. Maybe I'm in reading mode, so I may be probably missing exactly what that actually says. Yeah, that's a lengthy Reddit reply. I'm not going to go through that. And they're not just doing this on Starfield. They're actually doing this on Forza Motorsport as well. The exact kind of thesis of the replies aren't quite as, they don't expound as much about the notion that perhaps the gamer should shift around in their seat and view the game from a different perspective. A lot of the ones on Forza are more so pointing them towards like support sites and things like that. But I don't know, Tao, we'll start with you. Kind of, what are your thoughts on Bethesda's approach to tackling this notion of negative reviews on Steam?
Yeah, I read a few of them during the week when this first came out, when I first saw the news articles and stuff. And and some of them were just kind of super generic, like, oh, I'm sorry, you're having fun with this. They give a few suggestions on what to do, creating a different character with different stats, or just kind of generic kind of things. But then there's other ones where like people were complaining about, a lot of the planets and moons, they're just so barren and there's nothing to do. And then they came back with like something in the response, like, well, in real life, when we went to the moon, there wasn't anything there either, but we had stuff to do. And it was like, that's kind of a weird, like, that has really nothing to do with like with the game itself. Like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that we had scientific stuff to do in real life on the moon, but this is a game and people want to be able to do stuff, and okay, some of these planets and moons may be barren, but there is things you can still do. And like, granted, it's probably going to be like pretty much the same thing, like, finding minerals and finding flora and fauna, which maybe not in the moon because obviously there's no atmosphere and stuff. But there's other things you can do. But I think just it was just kind of like a generic thing that people were saying, but just the response was kind of goofy. But I mean, I guess it was fine. Like, it is kind of weird that they would respond to it, but I guess they're just trying to they're just trying to get good with the game, the gamers and the game itself. So I don't know.
So, DBQ, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it. Well, I have thoughts, and they are both like, how effective is this going to be in terms of outreach, but also part of the why this feels so strange is that it is not something that is normally done for a game this size. Doesn't mean they shouldn't do it, right? Like, there is plenty of smaller mobile developers. You see this on mobile reviews, like on iOS and on Google Play Store reviews all the time, that people are replying to it in this kind of, it is an ongoing conversation piece of follow-up. So I could see where somebody might be trying to do this. Again, the level of profile of the person doing it seems disproportionate. So I think that's the other piece where this sticks out, where this is not a company that this is now part of their community management strategy, that you have someone at an upper level. And by the nature of it being addressed, it's like when you screw up at work and it's not your supervisor that comes to talk to you about it, it's the CEO that comes to talk to you about it. It either feels really either like, I really screwed up, which, we all have done, or that, why is this guy at this level? Why are we in the weeds to this degree? And that's where this feels, that's where I am. This is my him and haw of this in terms of how this plays out.
Well, I'm going to take it a step further. In my opinion, this is yet another rock on the pyramid of what, quite frankly, is just a train wreck of PR and marketing on the behalf of Xbox since 2022. And I don't get it. Like, and it hasn't been this bad before. But in the last, since this generation, like, and remember, I used to talk very frequently about Sony being mealy-mouthed and talking out of the sides of their mouth and, like, telling half-truths. And I'm like, Sony, just shut up. Like, stop telling people half the story. If you're not going to tell them the whole thing, don't say anything. You're making a big deal out of something that wouldn't be a big deal if you just shut up and let it go away. And that's kind of what this is. If Bethesda wasn't on the boards putting stuff about this, the game would just speak for itself. Fallout 76 was a travesty in how it released, just in terms of, I'm not, and that's not my comment on whether it was a good game or a bad game. That's my comment on how it was received, right? But that game turned itself around. It is one of the highest rated games on Steam right now. That wasn't because somebody from Bethesda was posting responses to negative reviews on Steam. That's because the stinking development team went and fixed the game. What are we doing? Like, I don't get it. Like, this is, you make a $70 billion acquisition, and this is where you're going to apply your money and level of effort. You're going to hire a bunch of interns, people straight out of college. Dare I say, I look at some of these responses, and I'm absolutely certain that some of it is offshored, right? A lot of them are the same canned responses. If you are a Microsoft sysadmin type and you spend a lot of times on the Microsoft forums, a lot of these things start off with the same type of canned opening response that really torque people. If somebody's on the Microsoft forums, they are not there because they are a Luddite and they don't understand technology. They are on the forums because they probably have half a thimbleful of technical common sense, and you opening your response with, I'm so sorry that you're having such a bad Windows experience. Have you tried these 5 steps that kids in high school know to check and like I don't get it. Like, and DBQ, that's my big thing, kind of what you said. Like, what in the world do you possibly expect the response to this to be? This is not how you help your game improve its Steam community user review score. And what this smells and smacks of to me is somebody who is entirely out of touch with the way the gaming community operates, because the gaming community and somebody who's a PC game purveyor and somebody who's a publisher the size of Microsoft should, great Scott, understand the Steam user community and understand what drives them and understands what makes them post reviews. They are, quite frankly, the most reliable source of user reviews on the internet. And in my mind, this is not the way to go about it. So, sorry. Let's go on to segment 3 and wrap up with our games that are maybe not the newest games, but are still games that we are playing. Tao, you've been playing Pokemon. And let me, I feel like maybe we should have a discussion about, should we just put all of our handheld gaming here in the second session, because that's what it's going to be tonight.
Yeah. Real quick. I was just continuing to go through Pokemon Violet, and actually, I kind of switched what I was going to do from the past show. So I was going to try to do like shiny hunting, which I'm still going to do eventually. But I realized when in this one area, which is called Area 0, which is kind of where you end up in one of the storyline, I think it was a three or four major storylines throughout the game. There's just all these exotic, kind of different Pokemon. Some of them are the same from the rest of the game. They're the same name or same look, I should say. But there's something a little bit different about them. I don't want to give anything away, but they're stronger and stuff like that. So I realized going through here, I was like, oh, you know what? I have, the group I had at the time, whatever, 5 or 6 Pokemon I had. I was like, you know what? They're kind of low level. So I had 2 that were like a higher level that I had kept over from my main team when I was kind of going through the gyms. And I was like, oh, let me just, I'll boost these guys up real quick. So so those 2 are like 70 and 80 levels, they're pretty high up there. The rest of them were like, I think in the teens somewhere, like 14, 15, 12, 14, 15, 13, 14, 15. So I went in there, I did a couple battles. And I realized after just doing like a couple battles, I was like, what's going on? Like the rest of my team was already up like almost to mid 20s. I was like, what? That's weird. So then I switched them out to some other low level Pokemon I had, and I went back in there. I did one fight, and like just automatically, like I had, let's just say they were like all level 10, except for the 2. So after that one fight, they all automatically like jumped up like about 10, 20, 15 levels. I was like, whoa, like, okay. So now what I'm going through and from all, so I don't think I ever said this before, but I tried to catch 2 of each Pokemon. So like a male and female, because I think most Pokemon games have a breeding aspect to it. And obviously you need a male and female, or at least in this one, you need a male and female, these games. So I was doing that so I can do some breeding later on, and now I'm going through and powering up all those Pokemon, just to kind of power, like super power level them in this Area 0 place. So I'm doing that right now, and then eventually, like I said, I'll try to go to the shiny area, or the shinies, and capture them and possibly do the other gyms again. I shouldn't say other, but do the gyms again, because that's part of the storyline. So that's where I'm at right now.
I just have snark to follow up with. So, right, like, I mean, as you become kind of this Pokemon breeder, and you've been stockpiling male and female, like the best part about it is that you say it in such a way, like, guys, I don't know if I told you this, but I have one of each sex Pokemon. And then like as Game Logic is talking about getting on the grind, and here you are, you're just grinding your way out in Pokemon for the sheer enjoyment of it. So
yeah,
this is a great topic for an Animal Planet show. We'll have the Pokemon breeder, Tao, with part of the show would be live action, but the other part of the show would be anime. And actually, Gary Whitta did his thing during the pandemic of the talk show that he hosted in
the Animal Crossing talk show.
Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
You should give some thought to doing Machinima on a Twitch channel or your YouTube channel, as an Animal Planet show. Yeah.
All right, I'll go next. I have been playing a little bit, as I said last week. I was gonna dig some more time with the Steam Deck, the OLED Steam Deck, and I have a number of kind of indie games that I had flagged over the course of the year that I haven't had a chance to. One, I was waiting for sales. Thank you, autumn sale and Thanksgiving sales, but I haven't had a chance to kind of play some of these. So, Super Catboy was a game that it is going back to animal loving aspects. It is it is a mascot platformer to some degree. It feels like a really super polished end of generation 16-bit game. It has got some really tight some really good platforming, like some really smooth kind of wall jumps and momentum. It has your combat is in it's not it is platforming in terms of movement, but not platforming in terms of the traditional like mascot jump on heads. You get weapons, you have punching attacks, so it feels more in like that adventure game kind of aspect of the 16-bit side scroller. So it's a lot of fun. Looks beautiful on the Steam Deck, plays really nicely. So that is one. The second one is Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower came out this summer as well. Pizza Tower it looks like 1990s Nickelodeon animation, kind of Ren and Stimpy, uh, kind of a little bit of French animation in terms of its rough design, and it takes a lot of inspiration from the traditional Wario Land games in terms of the side scrolling, the kind of running through things, the kind of bulky weight of your character, but has some really smooth, fluid, and challenging platforming dynamics in it as well. So, and I think that I enjoyed it playing it on a controller. I need to get more used to the controls of the Steam Deck, right? Like, because there are movements where you are dashing and then you are holding a trigger button to do a boost before you duck to then power up a jump to get up to a higher level. Like, there are multiple combinations, and my hands are not used to where all those buttons are yet on the deck.
The wide body stance
Yep.
does make a difference in the ergos. Yeah.
Yeah, right. When I can pull that off in a smaller, tighter controller, but it feels difficult in Pizza Tower. Then my third one is Gravity Circuit. Gravity Circuit came out back in the spring, I think in March or so. It's got some roguelike elements in it. It also has a little bit of smashing up Mega Man and maybe some Bionic Commando, because you have a kind of a grappling hook for some traversal and attack. It looks very much in kind of the 8-bit style with a beautiful layer of polish. It's bright, vibrant colors, but a very, very limited color palette. A lot of neon in there, and plays fast and smooth. Again, perfect on a Steam Deck, runs super great. These are small indie games, but definitely some of the games that I was hoping to kind of knock out and at least get a chance to experience before we got into the end of our year.
Any comments you have about the Steam Deck OLED in general from a hardware perspective, since it's your first outing with that device?
No, because everything I've played so far is low end stuff, right? Like, I haven't had the time to download some of the bigger games onto it. I think that's really where I want to see. I mean, it is beautiful. I love the OLED screen. Like, playing some indie games on this, it's Gravity Circuit is also out on Switch. I've had it on my Switch wish list, and I've taken it off it. Like, I don't need it on two different portable platforms. And it looks just, it's beautiful. I mean, I am a believer in the OLED screen, which I am curious why you're playing on your LCD deck.
Yeah, well, before we get to mine, when I saw this list of games and you playing them on Steam Deck, I wanted to do the Yona Hill vibe or meme of him being exhausted and wiping his eye, because I was like, DBQ, I know you love indies, and I always appreciate from an intellectual perspective. I have the utmost respect. You carry the indie weight for the channel, and I respect it because I always preach that people need to be out there playing more indies. People constantly complain about rising costs of games, and greedy corporations and stuff. I'm like, well, because you guys don't play indies, you guys throw all your monies at the AAA's. But when I saw your list of games, I was like, greatest games like on the Steam Deck, Diablo 4, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Elden Ring, Forza Horizon 5. Like there's other things, but I respect it. I get that you didn't have the time to get into some of those bigger, meatier things this week. For me, part of it was we kind of tiptoed, toe dipped kind of on this topic, and it was, what am I going to do with the Steam Deck LCD? And it's just really not and again, I have a low tolerance for monkey dorking around with eBay and trying to sell stuff around. In my older years, I used to do a lot of that, but I'm just like, I don't feel like being bothered with trying to offload the Steam Deck LCD. So I'm just going to use it. I have my Steam Deck OLED is 1 terabyte with a 1 terabyte card. The Steam Deck LCD is, I guess 512 was the old max. And I have a 512 gigabyte card in it. So, I'm just like, whatever, 2 handheld systems with, 2-3 gigs of space to use for, games that, make things readily available, right, in either across either one of those that I pick up and want to sit and play handheld. So this week I've been playing Super Mega Baseball. Actually, didn't put the number there. Super Mega Baseball 3, and of course 4 is out this year, and I haven't had a chance to check it out. So I just wanted to check out 3. Having a great time. I think I've talked on this channel. Maybe I've mentioned a couple times about how I used to love just kind of hanging out on my couch, playing EA's MVP Baseball back in the early 2000s on my PlayStation Portable. And this kind of very much kind of gives me that same kind of nostalgia, right, for playing those games. And I've mentioned on this channel before, when I played this game on PC, kind of, cutesy, comfy game, kind of character models and big head models, right? But I mean, it is no less of a depth of understanding that you have to have in the tactics and discipline of baseball.
Yeah, I think that's why I've loved Super Mega Baseball. Like it looks very cartoony, but it has, from its initial one, I remember playing it on PlayStation 3. Like it has always been a very deep baseball game.
Yeah, and I actually like that it feels like it gives me it delivers more control onto the hands of the player in terms of pitching. Its control scheme really allows you to, if you want to throw a curveball in the high left corner of the strike zone, you can, right? Whereas in MLB The Show, like you have like 1 or 2 pitchers who can do that, but it leans much more heavily in the direction of the talent of the player, and much less in your own ability, where you may be able to argue that Super Mega Baseball lets you pull off too many kind of junk pitches that really tie batters up, but there's got to be a fair balance in there somewhere, right? And I just feel like in MLB The Show, like 90% of the pitchers like have this very small meatball of space that they can throw into effectively, and painting the corners of the strike zone just seems to be a very rare thing that you could do, and even most pitchers can only pull off like maybe a dozen pitches of that ilk in a game before you're starting to impact their stamina and stuff like that. So but I'm having a good time with it. Enough that I've gotten into it enough where I'm moving the lineup around. I see people's there's a depth of the game that I participate in more on Super Mega Baseball 3, because I kind of feel like I haven't quite nailed it down, but like I feel like there's some amount of cruft that I have to deal with in MLB where either I don't have enough latitude, or there's other administrivia I have to deal with that doesn't allow me to get as much, into some of these things where like I actually look at everybody's batting stats after a game and I go, hey, really good. Like that guy, bats were really swinging there. I think he's like on a good trend. Let me move him around in the lineup, right, and kind of put him someplace more effective, right, in the batting order. Whereas I feel like I can't I don't have the time to do that in MLB, because I got to move on to the next thing. So not sure what that is, but it's just a feeling. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, I've also been playing American Truck Simulator this week, which just it is my zen game, right? It is my kind of comfy game. I love the high precision kind of maneuvering when you're trying to back a truck up onto the dock. And I love the career mode, right? Where I'm down as a junior level, truck driver, just taking my 2, 3, 4, 5 grand jobs, trying to build up my piggy bank, until I can go out there and afford to buy a truck. But digging around on the forums a little, where people say, I'm like looking for like, look, should I take a loan? Should I buy a truck? And people are like, no, just do the grind. Just make the money. Eventually you're going to be able to buy a truck, and there's no point in going early. You're getting enough of the experience underneath your belt, and then when you buy your own truck, right, you're going to be able to do even more. So, like I said, been having a really good time with it. Really enjoy that game. Need to try out Euro Truck Simulator 2 as well. But I love that game on PC, and it's great playing it on the Steam Deck as well. So, gentlemen, DBQ Hams, what's coming up for you next? You're the only one who knows, where he's planning on heading.
I do, because I've got another semi-indie game to play. So this is Bang on Balls Chronicles. So I had never heard of this game. Came out in October. It is a small indie studio, Exit Plan Games. The founders of Exit Plan they've worked for CD Projekt Red. They've worked on MotorStorm, Bulletstorm, People Can Fly, places. So they've got some chops. It's a 3D kind of, reminds me of The Blob in terms of kind of its visual style. So I'll be curious to see what it's like. This is one of those where I stumbled across looking on Open Critic and looking at some of the best rated games of the year. And when you find a game that you've never heard of, it kind of makes you stop and go, So I'll have that to report on.
Very good, very good. So one thing I want to mention, TGA's Game Awards is Thursday night. So you'll be able to watch that and then go to work on Friday and talk around the water cooler with what you liked or what you didn't like about the show. Next week, Tao will be Tao will be in the center seat doing host duties, and DBQ and I will be backing him up on the ones and twos. For anybody who happened to swing through the live stream tonight, we appreciate you, Otacon Ocelot. Thanks so much for swinging through. For anybody out there who happens to watch the archive version of this live stream after the fact, we appreciate you as well. Please feel free when you do to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. So we got the TGAs this week. I don't think there's any more big releases remaining this year. Oh no, I take that back. There's Avatar.
Yeah.
Which I am definitely, unquestionably. That game is actually, it's so much of a Far Cry clone. And again, I'm fine with that because that's in my wheelhouse. That's, I very rarely say it. That might actually be a game that I do go day one on that game. Not sure what system I might play that on. I need to take a look at what systems it's available. So we will see. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. I'm here to talk about the games that you love. Once again, my name is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. One of your co-hosts on the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. For myself, Tao, and DBQ Hams, thanks so much for swinging through. That's going to do it for us for tonight. Until next time, we're out of here.